Morning, friends. Welcome back to another episode of Books, Blades, and Builds. Jeff Allen here, and today we want to think and talk about all things whittling and carving. So we've got initially The Art of Whittling. What a great book. Classic. Originally published in 1930, if you can believe it. And what it talks about is all things from the beginning. People have been carving and whittling since the dawn of time, and this book really captures some rather sophisticated options as well as some really intricate basics. Look at that. You can actually create a pair of tongs, like a wooden tongs. So it's a really good book. It really challenges the beginner to think outside the box and focus on some very advanced craftsmanship as well. So this was one of the books that kind of supported my whole journey through whittling and carving. And much like many of you, around a campfire or at a camp, and when you have that quiet time, it's an awesome activity to do. Whether you try your hands at some simple ladle and spoon making, these were rather deep and crude, but it presents the idea. But before you get into a big project, one of the top and most popular activities to practice and hone some skills is creating what's called a tri-stick. Now, the term tri-stick represents taking that length of stick, it can be green or dry, and creating a bunch of notches. And they're functional notches that can transfer into larger projects, and obviously larger notches or larger pieces of material. So anything from just carving a point to various other, there's a kind of a hook hanger notch, square notch, different L7 notches for tent pegs or trap making, scalloped U-shape round notch, just chamfering in a little beaver cutting either side, deeper notches, and maybe even so far as to make a face and try some different characters. So that was a very popular trend at some point, but also a popular tool to practice. The tri-stick, and Morris Kohansky and various other survival instructors have always incorporated that into a system of learning for carving. One of my most sophisticated carvings was just getting into the idea of whimsical characters, and this little guy. And this is a little kind of a pack thinker, just relaxing, some Boy Scouts references with the wide brim hat from Baden-Powell, but just the whole pack. And then I had an axe on the side of it too, but it fell off into my travels, and then I stained it all different colors from random wood stains. But a character like this takes some while, and just take your patience, and it represents all those things from patience to craftsmanship to having those visions for an end product out of what started as a scrap of wood. So again, if you start with a finished piece of wood like so, softwood is probably pretty forgiving, but you have to be very cautious with some of the finer details, as it can easily break off. And if all you had was a random scrap piece of cedar, that's also a good option. So in terms of the book piece, whittling, and some of the early manuals for carving, those are some of your best options. In terms of materials, obviously any material you have is the best material. But if you're a instructor and you have access to a dollar store, one of the things I picked up for one of my groups, I'll share with you, is this, and it is a bamboo fence, approximately 8 inches long by 1 meter long, about 3 feet long, and in it is all these individual bamboo stakes. Okay, now with bamboo is a very durable material, And one of the things we were sharing with my particular group is how to carefully split wood, not unlike the skill of batoning, but then you would have two pieces, and then we were practicing making notches, and actually this is a used one, but they function as a very simple and lightweight tent peg. So that was kind of a neat thing. Also, the L7 combination is really handy for teaching how to make those notches for perhaps trap making. You can use your awl or the point of your knife to practice some of the making some holes in a full width tent peg, which could be used in sandy or kind of very loamy soft soil, and that works really well for a tent peg. A little more advanced is you can make a net needle, like a little shuttle, and the net needle holds a hank of line or string or whatever you're using, and then that's able to be moved through and use it as a holder and keeping your line all in place to construct nets, for example. So the net needle or shuttle is another advanced project with that opening, but with bamboo it remains very stiff. So unlike some softer woods like cedar, something like this would be very novice friendly. You could even whittle it down and everybody can make their own camp spatula for those small twig stove frying pans. And even, in fact, you can actually buy bamboo utensils at the store, so this is not too far from the real thing. So functions really well. I wanted to share that with you today as well. On to the blade portion. Anytime you're carving and whittling, some particular attention should be made to what you're using. I don't have a dedicated carver. I have never acquired one just yet, but there's some that have different properties that lend themselves well to carving. Something like very fine and dainty. Sometimes the point can do wonders, but also get in the way. This handle is a little small for my hand for control. So for that reason, it's the right size, but I don't really love the shape. But if that's all I had, that's all you have. Something a little more Puko-esque is very popular, and for me, when I do a lot of the carving, I really use my thumb to help navigate and push, do a lot of the pushing and direction in and around the structure. And I love the long point, but I also love, because we're not using it for bushcraft necessarily, a non-90-degree spine, and that is a little gentler on the thumb over prolonged carving. So that's one observation. If you have, this is an old Beavercraft knife, certainly would do more than the job necessary. The kind of this drop point at the front might not be the best option, but one thing that's tricky for me is just that secondary bevel in a hollow grind. I'm not a super fan of the hollow grind, and it's sometimes difficult to carve with knives like that. Simple knives are sometimes some of the best. Here is a very safe, well, I call safe, very sharp 90-degree spine, carbon steel, and this is kind of the protective guard here, where certainly youth can use that, but it's also really good for novices, and it's a good solid knife. A little long for what I would like, but that's a classic shape for some of the carvers. Some people prefer less of a belly, less of a curve on their knife, and kind of have it a little more steeper. I think you're going to find many of the professional carving knives are like that, but I know carving has been done with any number of blades for endless years. Big blade on this is the Mora Robust. I like that it doesn't have a 90-degree spine, but again, if that's all you had, that's great. I would like less belly on my carving knives. I also enjoy, I showed this one in the last episode, a really large bulbous handle. It really fills the hand, gives you great control, a great purchase, and then you're able to carve. I do like the size of this blade. In fact, if this was about a 2.5 inches shorter and a little more profile, that would probably be the ideal carver. And that's quite, resembles many of them that are out there. This is a CPM 3V from Focuser Outdoors. I provided a quick review on this one. This one's your typical bushcraft knife and very suitable for most carving. Because of the Scandi grind, because of the fine tip, you're able to do most any carving task with most bushcraft related knives. I have zero concerns. This is a new knife to my collection. And again, the CPM 3V, Focuser Outdoors, drop point, Scanti grind, full tang, micarta G10, I think. Micarta or G10? G10 handles. I have to look that up again. Lanyard hole and screwed in kind of Allen key bolts on there. 9-degree spine. Love this knife. Love this knife. Love the sheath. Very great lockup, and it actually has that thumb ramp and rotating belt clip with ferro rod hole, and there's the drainage. The only complaint that I have for this knife is its weight. It's a little weighty, but that's just me. I don't know if it's the thickness of the steel or the type of handles versus wood, but it's a little bit of a heavy knife. But you're definitely, I have no qualms about using that as a any kind of batoning that knife at all. It's going to stand up and manage some of those wet conditions. But I did want to point that out as a very popular shape in terms of options. Anytime I'm also whittling, sometimes I carry some sort of little saw. This is a very, very small saw. The unique thing about this is that I can exchange the blades. So that is a 6 TPI wood blade. It's a little coarse, but you can get a finer blade, almost down to a hacksaw in blade or teeth size, and that would be really good for some of the finer work and making different stop cuts. Folders, I highly recommend a locking folder. Just the open and close knives without the folder, commonly the Swiss Army knife, very dangerous, especially if you start navigating and turning in any kind of circular direction, making circles. I remember my brother doing that with the Swiss Army knife, and it turned around and closed on his hand, and out of fear he pulled his hand out quickly, and he got quite the scar. Additionally, with this very knife, I was using it to also do some carving years ago, and I came across a knot that was really causing me grief, and I moved my hand to the upper end to really hold the stick into my belly and put a lot of force on it, and sure enough the knot let go, and I just was able to get my hand open quickly enough, but the tip caught the end of my finger, and I don't know if you can see there, there's a scar that kind of opened up the end of my finger. I could have caught it across the knuckles, but my reaction time was almost good, but not great. But this was one of my first little camp knives as a Boy Scout, made by Normark. Big Swede it's called, and stainless. Seen a lot of traffic. You can take the scales off, clean it out, put them on there with a flat screwdriver, and it has a little lanyard that goes back to the case or your belt, just for carrying safety. And what a great little knife that was. Years later, I came back to the same shape, and one of my top 3 favorite knives is very similar. And this is from Scandinoff knives, Nordic Protector 130, and this is just a very unique Viking sax design, high Scanti, razor sharp, And I bring this out because anytime you are carving, and I love the option to have a great tip, you can hold the knife in the one hand and do all the steering. Sure, you can pull off some big chunks in a hurry. That's what a big knife can do. But then with the finer point and your thumb, you can come in here and push and navigate around, holding the knife in the one hand, and then create all these finer cuts and details. And if you're really careful, you can start to create almost a face in the wood, and alternatively come right up and do a push cut, having great control. And then you can start creating any number of things, and this could be a whimsical creature with a hat, and you can imagine where that could go. So big knives, yep, there's a place for them. Just got to be careful on how you use them, and have lots of practice making such things as our tri-sticks. Okay, that's a few different things today. We looked at the book Art of Whittling. We looked at some different whittling projects and tools, and a variety of tools that I use in the field. I also carry with me a little pencil case of sorts full of various gouges, and that's great for carving bowls and whatnot, but not always practical when you're on a multi-day hike. Try to invest in some high-end carving tools if you're so inclined. There's so many resources out there, and I'm just barely scratching the surface with obviously appropriate tools. That's all for the book and the blades and a bit of learning. We're going to leave you with one last thing, and that was a DIY project inspired by the Wazoo Survival Belt. I had an old old shoulder bag. This is the outside flap of a larger bag, and I cut that off, and this is now a nice pack for all random pieces of cordage. But from that bag, that larger zipper, I took that larger zipper off, attached some buckles and various rings and D-rings and clips, and that zipper goes all the way around, and I've repurposed it into a survival belt. So this belt has any number of things in it, from ferro rods, knives, fire lighting, fishing kit, an automatic fish catch trap, first aid, some various snacks, and a secondary blade, some more fire starter, some cordage, a bag. I was able to even fit in a garbage bag in here, and any number of other pieces that you could imagine could fit into such a little confined system. The unique thing about this is I was able to take the two clips, and on one of my other kind of embellished canvas haversacks, I was able to attach the clip here, one side, get in there. Anyhow, that fits on there, and that can be the actual shoulder strap for your bag, much like that one there. So it looks like I replaced the clips and didn't want to fit on my original haversack, but that's where those clips would naturally fit, and then you'd have that extra strap for your bag. All right, you can tell I haven't used that one in a while. Jeff Allen, Author Great Hunter, thanks for watching. Don't forget to smash that notification bell and subscribe, and stick around for next episodes of Books, Blades, and Builds. Thanks for watching. Enjoy your outdoors. Bye for now. Cheers.